It is a tremendous kavod that we were able to have here tonight Hagoyin Rabbi Ephraim Wachsman Shlita, Rosh Yeshiva, Me'or Yitzchak, whose Torah has a powerful hashpah and gives a unique chizuk to the Olam HaTorah. Hagoyin Rabbi Ephraim Wachsman Shlita.
Bereshus Baronon v'Rabbanon Rosh Yeshiva Shlita, Bereshus dem Größen Oirach Rosh Yeshivas Chevron Shlita, Bereshus Adirei HaTorah, Bereshus Machzikei HaTorah, Chulam Mekablim Aleihem Oil Malchus Shamayim Zeh Mizeh V'noisnim B'ahava Reshus Zeh Lo Zeh. There's so much Kabbalas Oil Malchus Shamayim in this room right now. There's so much Noisnim B'ahava Reshus Zeh Lo Zeh here right now. So almost the Eibishter helfen that we should be able to take this Kabbalas El Malchus Shamayim, this Ahava, and to use it lahagdish liyotzram benachas ruach besofa beruda v'neimo. The Gemara Masechta Shabbos tells about Ahutz Doiki. Some say it was a goy. The Chazil Rove, the Koma'ayim B'Shmaitze. He saw Rove sitting and learning, being Ma'ayin in the Sugya. And Rove was pressing on his etzboyes, on his fingers. The Komavin etzboyes say Doma, there was blood running from his fingers. Amalei, so Tzdoiki said to Rove, I'm a psizo. You are a reckless, brazen nation. The kodmisu pumaychu lodnaichu, you put your mouths before your ears. And akati bepachzusaichi kaimaisu, you're still standing in this rash recklessness. You should have first listened. You should have first heard what the Rabbi Shalom has to say. And only then, if you saw that you could be makablet, only then should you have accepted. Sehr schwer zu verstehen, die Gemara. Normally, if somebody does something that appears at first to be something out of Bahola, out of Pezizus, reckless, imagine Lahavdul in the oilam, the financial world, somebody invests a large sum of money and it was ill-advised and people advised him against it and he sustains huge losses and so his career is over, his reputation is ruined. But if somebody does that same act and for some reason he's successful beyond belief, he's hailed as a genius, as a hero, and everybody's running to him for advice. You come now, the Tzdoiki comes now and he says, I'm a Peziza. You did a reckless thing by saying Nasa v'nishma. Was there ever a wiser decision ever made in all of history than Klal Yisrael's Kabbalas HaTorah? Even the Umas Ha'olam understand Ki chochmaschem uvinaschem leini ha'amim sheyishmun es kol achukim o'ele v'omru rak am chochom v'novoin hagoy hagodol hazeh. So the choice, the bechira, was Molei Chochmah, Molei Seichel, Molei Atzloche. And what did he see? So what is he using to repudiate the decision of Nasa v'nishma? As eit wie Robes rinnt von ein Blut von der Finger. He cut himself and he wasn't aware of his surroundings. He was so absorbed in his learning. Notice that was such a chiddush. Lahavdil, there are absent-minded professors who forget where they are. It's a normal zach. And people who are involved in intellectual pursuits, I feel our mol and our businessman, a soicher, could be so shokua on what he's doing. He forgets everything that's around him. So here's the groise kasha on the Nasa and Ishma. Look at Rava, doesn't realize that he's bleeding. Now there's one line in the Gemara, Amadaf Ein Chazrin. What this stoiki, what this guy saw, he saw Rava being ma'ayin in a sugya. Try to imagine what it might have looked like to see Rava, the heilige Amoyre Rava, horving in a sugya. Rabbi Avraham Amsitzlov was a nephew of Chaim Volozhiner. He said that he heard from the Vetter that he once came to Vilna to be Makabel Pnei, Rabbi the Goyen. And he prepared himself, he went to the Merchatz. And a messenger came and said, the Rebbe ruft dich, you should come right away. And he was still wet, he was throwing his clothing on, and he ran to the Goyen. So as I came in, and the Machzeh that was before me, the Goyen seemed to be in such tsar and such yogoin. His face was black. His eyes were filled with anguish. There was smartutim, there was shmatas wrapped around his head. And he turned to me and says, please, please help me. Schon 3 Tage was ich mutsche sich da bschatten a Teusvis. You have to help me. And he said, the Rebbe kann ich sagen kapshat. Wie kann ich sagen im Schat? He says, Afal Pikein. You'll be Miyageya. And together, set sich Effen and Epes a Pesach. En met ongeben zu horven. Chaim Volozhiner had Epes a Pesach, a Machshove. Und von dem hat sich ongeben. Und sie gewann an Oil. Und mit geht die Keulis und Brocken von Sinai. And Chaim realized that now the Goyen has the Mahalach, and he left. And as he was walking out, he heard the Goyen bet dorten. Was all him etwas bringen zu essen. And he asked what happened. He said because 3 days he wasn't toying anything. Until he would be zoiche to understand the dover akosha that he was trying to be masig. Tosfos in Masechta Chagiga brings the Yerushalmi. When the Tanoim sat and learned Torah, they were surrounded by fire, by Eish Lohova. And it wasn't just in the time of the Tanoim, you do it, the Chafetz Chaim was made, he saw with his own eyes. Rab Nachum Kerodner was learning alone in Beis Medrash, and he was surrounded by a fire. The Chidah brings in Shem Agdoilim, the Maria ben Lev was made, that in Svarad, when they were oisig b'chidushe Ramban, it was Yotzu Zekukin Denure Mipumayu, there were sparks of fire coming out of the mouths of the Loimdim, when they were horving in Toiras Hashem. When Ephraim was mamik 6 hours in one machshava, standing in one place, till his head was red from Chaim, and he had to lean his head on the stone pillars in the Mesmedrash just to cool off the moyach. And the Chazon Ish couldn't take the 4 steps from his stender to his bed, and he collapsed from Yegiyah von Amelis B'Teure. But the Chazon Ish had gesagt, es bore de Deutsche nicht kann reinkommen in de Litte, wie lange Boch Ber Horvet in es Omol Batoiro. Und de Keule zu Blockim. Na Schir von der Schieber Rabban Zeche Tzadik Levroche, was misamek in Teure. And what were they all doing? They were all being masbeh, trying to understand what Rava was saying. Was hat Rava gesagt? Es stellt sich vor, seeing Rava being ma'ayin b'shmaitze. When you saw Rava being ma'ayin b'shmaitze, you saw ad sof kol adoiris, every word that was ever toiled and gehorvet to understand what the Rabbi says in every Rishon, every Achin, at Soif Kol Adoir is business Yisrei Torah Arayin. And you saw all the Mesiras Nefesh and all the sacrifice. You saw Eden teaching Torah, little kinderlich hiding in caves. And they taught them Omar Rove in basements and hidden cellars and communist Russia. Omar Rove, was hat Rove gesagt? And they were being marched out to go to work in Auschwitz. There would be a person, I heard this from people who were there, who would stand in front of the line, and he would be saying Mishnayos and saying Gemara and saying Omar Rove, and they repeated after him in order to be oisik b'Torah, even b'toich tzarosam. You were able to see the years of Mesiras Nefesh, of Talmidei Chachamim learning Torah mitoich hatchak and mitoich ha'oini. You were able to see the Ishes Chayil of a Kurli man holding a stack of bills in her hand. She's overwhelmed, but she's bravely determined not to say a word about it to her husband, so as not to distract him when he sings Omar Rove. In the Kabbalah's Yisurim, the readiness to be Moise Nefesh. I know of a mishpacha, Kenza Pezenlich, in Lakewood, years ago. One night the husband came, it was Friday night, he came home from shul and the kinderlich weren't there at the table. And his wife told him, I put them to sleep early. And I told them it's Thursday night, because I don't want them to have a memory for the rest of their lives how we had to have a Shabbos Suda with a can of sardines. When you saw Rava learning Torah, being ma'ayin b'shmaitze, you saw the simcha and the joy of a Yiddish kind, the yungeleit, who comes the first day with his brand new Gemara. And he starts Haschola's Gemara and he comes home. And his father or his Zayda asks him, so what did you do today? And he says, we learned there was a Malach Elokim who was a shtik fire, and his name was Abaya. And he said, Yish Eloi Midas Loi Have Yish. And there's another Malach Elokim, a shtik fire von Himmel, and his name was Rava. And he said, Yish Eloi Midas Have Yish. And then his father and his Zayda were Molei Simchen Shevach Vaydo to the Rabbi Shalom. And their Zaydas and ancestors before them, Kedoshim Asher Boretz Hemos, they were all Somchu Bashomayim. That all of those years of tefillas of every morning, V'ni Anachnu B'Tzeitzeinu, B'Tzeitzeinu, Kulonu Yoidei Shemecho, V'loim V'Sorasecha L'Shmo, is continuing for another generation. And the Torah Kedosh that we received at Sinai is being transmitted again, B'Kedusha of Tahara. And when he saw Rava, Ma'ayim B'Shmaitze, it's not just Rava. There's Abaya, there's Rav Papa, there's Rav Chia, there's Rav Ashi, there's Rav Zeir, there's Rav Huna. He saw the Eish HaGdoilo. The Toysus Reik, why did it have to be Kofel Marki Gigis? They already said Nasev and Ishma. Because there's one thing that could make Chalila Chazor of Nasev and Ishma, the Eish HaGdoilo. And he saw this Eish HaGdoilo. He saw this fire. He said, Amo Pezizo. Who does such a thing? Who takes a fire like this that engulfs the entire universe and Allah Ilamois? How do you take this? How do you think that you're going to be able to carry it? To keep the flames alive? How much Mesiras Nefesh is it going to take? How many people are going to have to give their lives? How many people have to be impoverished? Dorach Hador. That this age should continue to be boyer ad leiv hashomayim, to sustain such a fire. Amma Peziza, the Moira Rabbi say, why are we here tonight? Rabbi Chonon told over, he was once by the Heilige Chofetz Chaim, and there was a Yid who came to the Chofetz Chaim. He said he wants to understand. There's so much hesed upon him. We need so much chizik and amunah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu used to be manig oilami with nisim, with miracles. Why doesn't he make any nisim? If he made nisim, we'd be able to see the Rabbeinu Shel Olam. And the Chofetz Chaim said, "Vos, nidoke nisim. I'll show you nisim. I had to be in Varsha to go to the Beis HaTfus, to the printer. The printer volume in Mishnah Brura, where I was staying, was nearby a university. And I saw in the morning that all of the students in the university were walking around with very tremendous seriousness. They were very nervous. And I asked, what's going on? They said, today there's finals. It's the final exam, and everybody is in tension. They're under stress because they have to pass their finals. And then at night, I heard noises, and I thought, surely there's a pogrom. Because they were out on the streets, boisterous and noisy and shikering and breaking things. I ran to lock myself in the room. And I asked somebody, what's going on? They said, no, they finished their hard day of taking their finals. And now they're resting. Now they're Megitza Charois Abissala. Or the Heilige Chofetz Chaim will look, Re'ezeh Pele. You go into yeshivas HaKdoishes, Tag und Nacht, V'gisa b'yoyim and v'layla, mit azah Dveikus, mit azah Have, mit azah Yegier. And when it comes by Nacht and vermacht die Gemorre, what do you see? Heiligkeit, Kedusha, Neimes, Midas Toives, Hayesh L'chon Nes Godel Mizeh. Of course we see Nisim. Look at the Olam HaTorah and you'll see Nisim. We're here to see this Nes. We're here to celebrate this miracle in a world that's gone insane. Insane with sheker, with lies. In a world that glorifies the most depraved human deterioration. In a world that tries to excise the soul of humanity and render us animals, Rahman al-Islam. In this sordid and pathetic existence rises the song of purity and Kedusha. O ma Rove, Rove Retnoch, this tzibur of B'nai Torah, who say O ma Rove, this tzibur who says, Ki heim chayenu, v'oirech yomeinu, u'vohem nege yoimam v'loilo. So we're here, in the name of all of Klal Yisrael, in the name of the Oves HaKadoshim, in the name of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, who thousands of years ago had this vision. And we're here to show our endless gratitude and our true humility, to thank you and to ask you for your heilige brachas, to thank you for carrying and sustaining this fire, this Eish HaGdolah that was accomplished by this tzibur, Heim, U'Neshayim, U'V'neiim, U'V'noiseiim, V'chol Asher Lohem. We've come together for Kvod HaTorah. What's Kvod HaTorah? I remember years ago I was a bocher in Eretz Yisrael. The Heilige Steipler, he only spoke B'Rabbim once a year. He gave a shir in the Yotzet and the Chazon Ish. And we took a car, we went to Bnei Brak to hear the shir of the Steipler. Came in, the room was packed. The whole Pnei Oyer was there by the Mizrach Wand, the Goinim, Tzadikim, Nebuch Rubam are no longer with us. You came in, there wasn't a sound. Everybody was just standing there with bated breath. And the Heilige Stipler came in, they made a path for him. And he began to say the Shir. He spoke for about 20 minutes. It was a Nedorim, a Kasha with a Teretz, a Birna Machloikis, a Ran and a Rashbe, a young Bache, wo he can't mithalten. Das echt gewesen eine moedige Heiligkeit von der Shir. When he finished, he walked out. There wasn't a sound. Nobody was pushing. Even after he left, there was such a stillness. I was there with a chaver, and he turned to me, he said, we just saw Kvod HaTorah. The Losh and the Medrash, by Kabbalah Satorah, Amar Abavo, Kshenosan HaKadosh Baruch HaSatorah, Tzipor Loi Tzovach, Oif Loi Porach, Yam Loi Nisdazeya, even the water in the ocean didn't ripple. Kishediba HaKadosh Baruch Hu al HaSinai, Hishti Kol Ha'olam, Kidei Sheyedu Habriyoi She'ein Chutz Mimenu. That was a very exalted moment of Kvod HaTorah. But I realized then that Kvod HaTorah means a new level of revelation. We had seen the Stipler many times, been into many times. But we felt then that we were in the presence of something we never experienced before. You're watching Talmidei Chachamim Nisgovim, who are so great in the Torah that we can't even begin to fathom their godless, and all standing, being botel umevutel be'aim of a year to the Rabban Shel Yisrael. And it brought us to a new understanding of Kulay Oimek Kovod. There's nothing else except the Kvod HaTorah. If tonight we come away from this Asifa with a new Hasoga, a new understanding, then we'll have added to Kvod HaTorah in the Bria. And the Bria needs desperately Kvod HaTorah. Because every day there's a baskel that's Yoytze Me'HaChoyrev and Machrezes and says, Oy Elohem lebrius me'el boina shel Torah. So what new Hasoga, what new perspective are we meant to be massig at such an Asifa? The Gemara Masechta Soita tells the story in Tanakh, in Shmuel, when they were taking the Orein. The story of Uzzah, David HaMelech was being mecharke b'chol ois, and they put the Orein on an agolo. And so tzachalug gegeben, and it looked like the Orein was going to fall off. Vayishlach Uzzah es yodoi lechois es ha'orein. He stretched out his hand to hold on to the Orein. Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Uzzah, noise of noise. Atzmoi lo kolshkein. If the Orein carries those who carry it, certainly it can carry itself. Vayichar af Hashem b'Uzzah, vayakeu shom al hashal. Omer Rabbi Yochanan, Uzzah bo lo'olam habo, shenema im aroinu elokim. Ma oroin lo'olam kayim af Uzzah bo lo'olam habo. What did Uzzah do wrong? What's the most natural reflex to anybody who was brought up as a Yid? A benchel falls down, you lunge, you pick it up, and you give it a kiss. Uzzah knew Oren Noises Noisov. He lived with the Oren, was in his father's house all of those years. He didn't have to be taught how you treat the Oren. But gesehen, if the Oren gets a charuk and be a Yid, full mit ahavas HaTorah, he gave him, put his hand underneath. And Taki was so dovik, he went up, Im Aroin Elikim, the Klayoka said he became so dovik in the Oren that he went up to Shemayim with it. But although he knew and he believed, like every Yid does, that Oren noises noisov, but in a moment of what we call reality, he saw it slipping, and deep inside of him, it wasn't yet enough b'chush. He didn't yet feel it in his Evorim ad kedei kach that he wasn't able to hold himself back from laying zu a hand zu halten der Oroin. So it gefehlt in Adirei HaTorah. It's an avodah noirah. We all know it. Every Erlechid believes it. But to live like that, to really believe and to breathe and understand that everything that we have comes from the Loim de Torah, that it's Ore, Neusers, Neusov, mit auf Horven of them, mit auf Misboinen sein and Misboidet sein noch and noch until it becomes as best as it can, becomes part of our very Evorim. There's a story told about the great Tsar, Rabbi Moshe Montefiore, who was Mekurim by all the Mlochem Besorim in Europe. The great philanthropist, the great Baal Tzedok, who did so much for Klal Yisrael. And he wanted someone to learn with him, to teach him Torah. He heard that in Russia, there's a maamad, his name is Rabbi Yitzchak, and he wanted to bring him to London. He should come and be his chavrusa and teach him and learn together. He sent down a mishlachas. They came to this little town in Russia, an opulent chariot with 4 white horses, and they pull up by the little hovel of this Rabbi Yitzchak. Don't know what hit him. He opens the door. We're shluchim of Sir Moses Montefiore, and he wants to take you, Rabbi Yitzchak, to come to London and teach him Torah. So what do you mean? Have a family? No, don't worry. We'll pay you enough. You'll have enough to live for the rest of your life. Just come for a year and come and be a chavrusa. Okay? They come. They make a date when he's going to come. And he goes by ship, and they come. They greet him in the harbor, and they take him a whole mishlachas in this magnificent agola. And there are offices and mishosim, yoyta mishosim, and they go passing through fields and mines. Each one they tell him, yes, this is the silver mines of Rabbi Moshe Montefiore, and this is the gold mines, this is the diamond mines, this is all his lands, his estates. And he keeps looking and looking, all he sees as far as the eye can see. Finally they come to this estate. There's a magnificent mansion. You have to walk all the way through the gate, and you're all the side, there's shoimrim and guards. And finally they come to the house, and they come into the house, and there's a prize door and a chamber and an antechamber, till finally come to the room. They see there's a huge oak door, and they open the door, looks in, there's a hall, and it's lined with mahogany shelves, and there's leather-bound svarim, and a magnificent marble table. The Tsar Moshe Montefiore is sitting there, and the Seder Yitzchak by now, he's seated. His knees are knocking, he's shivering, he never saw this thing in his life, and they tell him to sit down. There's 2 Gemaras there at the table, and he's maybe able to come out, not able to stand on his feet, and he sits down, and he's so bepachad, so he holds on to the table, and his knuckles are white, and he's shivering, and Moshe Montefiore says, no, start saying the Gemara. And Rabbi Yitzchak starts to learn. He says the Mishnah, he says the Rashi. He starts to get more and more excited. He asks a kasha, and his voice is getting louder and louder. And he starts to make koilis, he's screaming, and he's waving around with his hands. Das ken sein dem Pshat, das nicht dem Pshat, azoi darf man sagen, azoi darf man sagen. And suddenly looks at Rabbi Moshe Montefiore, and he sees that his knuckles are white, and he's holding on to the table, and he's shivering, and his knees are knocking. It's not enough to say, even to believe b'emunah shalema, or in noises noisof, but to know in our very essence that everything we have, the great shefa, the very freedoms that we enjoy, we live in America without persecution, there never was such a thing. That's also b'schus the Adirei HaTorah. Tonight's asifa. Tonight's Asifa is about a revolution in attitude. We are declaring that we believe, and we are committed to live with that awareness that indeed ha'oren noises noisov, and to live like the Gemara that sailed to Masechta Makis Yoshafat Melech Yehuda. He was Mekayim Vesirei Hashem Yechabe, the Melech. He got up from his throne. Avi, Avi, Rebbe, Rebbe, Moiri, Moiri. And with this, you zoiche, lishkoin bahar Hashem, and it says, miyoge, ba'olech, ba'olchem, yishkan bahar kodshecho. This has to become the new attitude in all of the world. The new understanding. It's an old understanding. The mechazik, everyone more and more to live with this, to appreciate this, to understand this. And with this lift up the entire Bria. And we need to be Mephias, the B'nai Torah. When there's a lack of Kvod HaTorah, when there was a header of Kvod HaTorah, Daf Ibebeten. There's a heilige Meise, tell about Rabban's Rebbitzin. Heard this from a Yid who heard it from someone who was there, a Bocha who drove Rabban. And he came into Borough Park before he went back to Lakewood. Rabban had borrowed, the yeshiva had borrowed a Mesilas Yesharim from a Bocha. He wanted to bring it back, but he couldn't find it. He was looking around the house, couldn't find it. Looking, sucht him Mesilas Yesharim, and the Rebbitzin said, and I played this pair. She said, I'm a Veisish in Malaktep is Bokmanish. A few seconds later, you heard a crash. And the Rebbitzin is lying on the floor. And she held on the back of the kapot of the yeshiva. She said, Mein Haar, ich hab Pegea gewen in Kvod HaTorah. Ich bete mechila. If we didn't appreciate, if we didn't live with the appreciation, if we don't understand that everything we have comes b'schus the loim da'atoyr, bebeten mechila, and we are committed forever and ever to live with truth, to live with emes. We need this for ourselves. We need this for the world. But mostly we need it for our children. Moire Rabbi say it was Erev Chodesh Sivan. And the Olam says the Tfilas Hashlo. By Yosem Mansi, you know, there's a cave of the Rimnitze. It's a mock and people see Groisi Yeshuas. So on Erev Chodesh Sivan, people wanted to go to Daven. You couldn't get near. It was backed up traffic. People left their cars blocks away and walked to the Beis Olam. I was able to finally get in. Huge crowds of people saying Tfilas Hashlo. Beten for seine Kinder. Rabbi said you could have went swimming in the tears that were flowing by these tefillas. Our children need so much chizuk. And there's many different explanations why. Aber die Yesod Adover is, Har Sinai sagt uns, Oilem lebriya ismael boina shel Torah. Every veitog that there is in the Bria could be traced el boina shel Torah. If there's a Yisroimamus, if we elevate Kvod HaTorah in the world, everything will become better. Everything will become mesukin. And our children won't have to worry. They won't have to be self-conscious if their clothing is not up to par of the latest designer name. They'll come to Cheder and they'll point out. They're not going to say, that's the son or the daughter of that Gvir. Or even that's the son or the daughter of that Rosh Yeshiva. They're going to say with awe, that's the son or the daughter of one who's sitting and learning Torah Lishma Mamish, and he's the one who's supporting us all. Then we'll have uplifted Yungeleit Torah. And with that perspective, with that attitude, will come a healing that's long overdue. Something that's part of Elboina Shel Torah. I hear it everywhere. People don't know about the thousands and thousands of Heilige Yungeleit, Horving, Baniyas, Bedachkes, and Lakewood. The world has taken a turn in a krumme direction. And we hear of excesses and redifus of Gashmias that are so disappointing to Klal Yisrael. And Klal Yisrael looks here to set the standards. What could put a stop to that? Not Isurim, not Charomos. A Hisroimemus in Yungeleit Torah, Memele, every bit of nonsense will become bottled from sich alleins. This false philosophy will be exposed as a bezoyan and an elboin. And the long overdue healing will begin. Because we see tonight the real Shoresh HaNeshama of the Heilige Machzikei HaTorah. What's really inside. Everybody's sick and tired of the emptiness. Everybody's sick and tired. Uns b'nei Torah in such a sviva. It was 11 Fayena. Everybody knows this is harming themselves and their doiris. The answer is one answer. Tnu kovoid la Torah. We live in a world. How could there be such a thing? And how could it be that we have magazines, publications that will have pages and weekly pages glorifying and talking about how this person or that person made their money, how they achieved their wealth. This is for our children to read. Avada, Jeden Darf Parnosse. There's trade magazines for every business. We get Eitzev Shia. But we know, whenever there was a publication by Yidden, there was either Sipurei Tzadikim, there was Divrei Torah, there was subjects of interest to the Tzibur. What are our children thinking? Is that Yungeleit HaTorah? That can only happen in a world that we let Elboina Shel Torah get out of hand. And so what is the purpose tonight? There's another purpose. Amo Pezizo. We accepted the Torah, we did a Ma'is of Pezizus. We said Na'aseh v'nishma. The Heilige Machzikei HaTorah. You know, they were asking, what's the purpose? There's a lot of ambiguity. No one was able to put his finger exactly what's the kavanah. And that's very appropriate. Because sometimes you have to say Na'aseh v'nishma. The Machzikei HaTorah took upon themselves an oil. They don't know how they're going to manage to repeat this year after year. They should be able to. So they decided we're going to be an Alma Peziza. We'll call everybody together and we're going to say, Na'aseh v'nishma, we are going to do. We take upon ourselves the Achzokes Torah, this Mifal HaNizgav HaKodosh. And once we say it and once we start it, there's no turning back. The Machzikei HaTorah, I just want to read for you the words of the Heilige Chofetz Chaim. The Chofetz Chaim writes, Kol haschus v'hamayla sheyesh letalmid chochem atzmoi kimoi kein yesh lemachzikim bidei loimdei haTorah. If you are machzik Torah, and through you and through your efforts and your generosity, this limud HaTorah, you have kol haschus v'hamala yesh lemachzikim kimoi biyad loimdei haTorah. And we see the Rebbeinu Shalom is sending a shefa. You have to ask yourself why. Imagine, ask a Ben Torah. One night he sits down to learn, and suddenly you see he doesn't understand what's happening. He has the head of the Ragged Shova. Everything he learns becomes like a photograph in his mind. He has the Havana of Reb Kivega. He's learning, he's going through the whole night. He finished 100 blot. He knows every word. He doesn't know what's going on. What happened to me? Something happened. The neshama oiris came down. So what's he going to do? He sees, I have an opportunity. Godless b'Torah. He's not going to stop. What does it mean? What does a Yid have to think if HaKadosh Baruch Hu suddenly sent him a shefa of millions and millions? What happened? I mean, the Eibishter is giving you the opportunity to be, in Loim de HaTorah, Mezei Grois, aber es geht nicht sein noch a Pnei Yeshua. Es geht nicht sein noch Reb Kivega. It's not going to happen. Can't happen because Yeridas HaDoiris. When it comes to Achzokes HaTorah, there's no Yeridas HaDoiris. Verkehrt, it becomes better and better. B'choch Wachsman steht, es geht über die Mitte von Chesed, von Avram Avinu. We can't be a Pnei Yeshua. We can't be Reb Kivega in a Toisvis. But you could be, B'zmanenu, a Pnei Yeshua, Reb Kivega, in Achzokes HaTorah. Im Ein Kemach, Ein Torah means that the Kemach and the Torah are inextricably bound. There's not a word of Torah. Ein Kemach means there's not a word of Torah that we have in this world that there's not a Kemach underneath it. You learn Birchas Shmuel, a Chabur is harving for 3 days to understand the Baruch Ber. There was a Yid in America in the 1920s. We don't know who he is. Nebuch Mistamach, he doesn't have any descendants who are Chmona Litztanu Yidin Afila. But he paid for the building where a Baruch Ber taught Torah, or he paid for the furniture, or he paid for the food that the Bachrim ate. And every single word of his statement, Maharbet in Zayin Achzokes HaTorah Lo Netzach. Behind every word of Torah, every Pnei Yeshiva Kivei Gevach Sefer, there's a Machzik. In every Torah man, there's an Eishes Chayil, there's a Shver, there's the people who give Kemach, in Ein Kemach, Ein Torah. And so tonight, our commitment also is to elevate the nobility, the aristocracy of the Machzikei HaTorah. Should understand and believe that they are Oisim Meleches HaKodesh. They should believe be'emes that Oren Noises Noisov. Doesn't come easy. Ramoshe Montefiore used to have a room where he had an Oren and Tachrichim that he would lie down every night in it and remind himself, we live in a world of dreams, of illusions every day. And every person one day will be in a box. And they want to take along this, he'll call his accounts. The balance is 0, 0, 0. Calls another account. 0, 0, 0. There's no further information available on this account. Click. The seichel to take not just Torah, you can have the Torah of thousands of Talmidei Chachamim lo netzach. Think of the opportunity. and think of how one has to approach Hachzokes HaTorah. Just read, don't want to be malach, a letter the Chofetz Chaim wrote. He describes how a person is supposed to look. B'shas he machzik Torah. I think you just write out a check. That the person is mesaken his neshama lenetzach. Before he takes the money, yispalel tefillah ketzora zu. Ribono Elamim, Adon kal neshamois, asher biyotcha nefesh kol chai v'ruach kol b'sar ish. Hineni, menadev b'zeh, ba'at stoke ba'at achzokes Torah. And b'yizvad v'hineni k'dei she'eskal yidei zeh l'zakes es nishmosi. Shetei zaku berura b'eis tchias ha-mesim. V'hineni shov u'mizvado u'mizchared b'charote gemura al kol ha'chatoim v'avoynes ha'pshoim shechaton shaviz shevshatim yoidim adayim hazeh. Frau, man gibt Geld für Teure. Man sagt Vidui, man geht in Mikve. Efter tut man an der Garten, depends who you are. Und man halt uns die Teure gedäusche. Die Messiah mit ein niffeldige Wort, der steht von Eligach Samseufe. We know our noises, noisov. Mit Samseufe in Droshes. He says there was, by the Shulchan it says, Lumas HaMizgeres Tieno HaTabois Levatim Levadim V'niso Bo Mes HaShulchan. It says V'niso, a Loshen Nifal. It says the Oren is Meramet in the Talmud Chochem, and the Badim on the Oren are the Zvulun. They're the Machzikei Torah. So it looks like they are carrying it, but as the Oren is Noises Noisov. But the Talmud Chochem is the Badim of the Shulchan. He's lifting up V'nisa Behem Es HaShulchan. He's lifting the Shulchan as the Ashiris. All of that is coming from the Talmud Chochem who's lifting up his Shulchan. So the question is, what's the difference then? So then, in any case, the Talmud Chochem is carrying the Shulchan. The Oren is lifting up the Noisim. So das the Boravaistois. Even if a person is not being Machzik Torah, everything he has, his whole Shulchan, it comes from the Badei HaShulchan. And he'll be lifted up. But there's a big difference. It said, Ven aufgehoben Shulchandik zu Orendik. If he be lifted up Shulchandik, he'll never go up. Yes, he'll have the Ashiras, he'll have the Shefa, but he himself won't change. But if he becomes the Noisei HaOroin, then he's lifted up not from the bottom, lifted up from top. And it never stops, and he becomes higher and higher. He becomes more dovuk in avodah, in Torah, in anivas, in humility, in ahavas HaTorah. His whole house becomes a mokim of kedusha. Because the Oren noises, nois of meint, sehebt oiv the mensch, orendik. Soll uns der Eibishter helfen. We should be zoiche that this new hasoge that has been established here tonight, it's not new, but the hasoge has to be lifted, inspired, and brought into the consciousness of every Yid in the world. Should be zoiche to see Eitz Chaim ila machazikim bo simchei mu'ushor. Should be zoiche to lilmoid, l'lamoid, lishma, v'lasu, l'kayim, and to be meloimim kvoid ha-Torah bis mit zoiche sein, zu bias Mashiach tzidkein, and binye beis hamidish meher bi yomeinu, amen.